morning. We will look at a verse that has been often misinterpreted and has caused actually a lot of heartache for people, unfortunately. Proverbs 22, verse 6. It's not the verse's fault. The verse is a great verse, but it is the casualty of kind of a genre category. Proverbs 22:6 reads, "Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it." That verse has plagued some well-meaning parents who worked hard at raising their kids, and their child went away from Christ and walked away from the faith when they became an adult. And there's a host of things that come to bear on this. But one of them is that people begin to feel guilty, like either they blew it, which that could be the case. Perhaps they didn't train them up in a proper way. And if that's the case, then there's an appropriate conviction that emerges out of this verse. But oftentimes, parents who love the Lord try to do their best to reflect Christ. They're not infallible. They're broken, always guilty as charged in terms of being failures. But they tried to train up their child in the way that he should go, as the verse says. Even when he's old, he'll not depart from it. And they look at that and they go, what God said, when he's old, he'll not depart from it. And I did my best, and I taught him the word of God, and I had them in church, and I shared my faith, and I discipled and got them in environments, and yet they walked away. And why is it that this verse says, even when he is old, he'll not depart from it, and yet he has departed from it? Has God failed upon his word? And so I mentioned at the outset that there's a genre mistake. This is not a promise, this is a proverb. A proverb is a timeless truth. It is a statement that is a wisdom statement that often is the case, but doesn't mean it is always, without exception, the case. So when we read this like a promise, we're making a genre mistake, and that mistaken interpretation and that mistake of recategorizing it in the wrong genre is really a weaponized mistake sometimes. Sometimes the evil one uses that in different ways. Certainly it's a good evaluative verse. Have you done your part to train up your child? I think we also have to note that in Hebrew, it doesn't actually say in the way you should go. In Hebrew, it basically says train up a child in his way. Even when he's old, he'll not depart from it. So it's possible that this is just a statement about kids tend to turn out how they're trained in different ways. And it may be primarily ethical. It may not even be primarily ethical. That's a possibility as well. It may just be a statement that in whatever way a child's trained up, that's where he's typically going to go. So I think it's large. It's important for us to see that when we add in the way he should go, it adds this kind of ethical impulse that might be present, but is not explicitly present in the verse, number one. Number two, and most importantly, it is a timeless proverbial, this is what usually or often happens statement. It's not a promise, and it is not a rule without exceptions. When it is read like that, it sets up an expectation that can be harmful. The great part of the verse is it's a wonderful reminder that we're all responsible to be trainers of our children. And that's our primary responsibility and focus. Of course, it may also be that the verse, because it uses a child, that your primary focus is that you train up your children, meaning that you're responsible for them when they're in the home. And that's what you're to do when they're in the home. You can't control every decision an adult makes, but you certainly have control in the home, and you shouldn't let up on that control in the home. It doesn't mean you should be dictatorial all the time. It doesn't mean that you should be hard-handed, nor ever harsh, but it does mean that you are a steward who's responsible to parent and to parent well to the glory of God. But it's not a guarantee of outcome. I hope that helps you with a thorny verse that sometimes gets understood inappropriately and utilized inappropriately. May the Lord bless you today.